And welcome to the 21st installment of the Jonesin on a Whim podcast. We're live right now, not when you hear this, at the North Estate Studios. A studio of one tonight. Art and Stefan are on hiatus. We'll get more into that later on in the show. But 21, we got to enjoy 17 and 18 with some tunes on those previous, but we're just doing the All NFL now, so it's going to be Fox or CBS, whichever I think conference we feel has the most dominant performance, and it's still the NFC is like 18-4 this season against the AFC, but that's why we'll continue with that Fox playing song. And if you're new to the show, welcome. If you're not, we always begin each podcast with mistakes from the prior week, and just 3 this week. And the first, it was an A/C that ESPN was reporting CJ Spiller's injury as, and I think they just meant AC. It might have been a typo. It did refer to an acromyoclavicular joint injury, but I believe he played last week, so it wasn't season ending, it wasn't game preventing, paycheck ending. So, and the second, I wasn't sure if Jared Allen had a sack yet this season. He hadn't. He got his first in that game against the 49ers. And the former linebacker of the Saints that I couldn't remember that is now with the Rams was Jolon Dunbar. He starts for the Rams now, I believe. Rolling on into our next segment, the 51-second segment, which if this is your first time listening, I'm from New Orleans. I consider that the 51st state, as it is nothing like not only the rest of America, but not even Louisiana. So 51 seconds, and this format is our injury segment, and I'm going to limit these to mostly fantasy and just big-time injuries. And the first one, because it kind of goes in alphabetical order by team. Terrell Suggs is actually aiming to return after his PUP stint, which is last 6 weeks. He's aiming to return in week 7 to play, and that's actually against the Texans, and I believe that's here in Houston. So that would be miraculous if he's able to pull that off. I wouldn't count on that. And for the Jaguars, kind of staying in the AFC South as we refer to the Texans, Laurent Robinson suffered what appeared to be his second concussion in as many weeks, so he is likely to miss this week's game against the Bears, which is interesting because we'll see how Justin Blackmon will respond as really their sole option at receiver. And Hakeem Nicks missed this past weekend's game against the Eagles with a knee or a foot, and then it's the knee, and it looks like he will return this Sunday against the Browns. The knee doesn't look bad. He's walking normally, but he did that last week, so who knows. And then we all know by now, Santonio Holmes, he left the game on that infamous fumble play this past weekend against the 49ers, and he will in fact miss the season with that Liz Frank foot injury. And infamous meaning he kind of just threw the ball up and said, "I'm out," and ended up being a fumble. This is when like Art and Stefan usually make comments, but they're not here, so I'll move on. Rashard Mendenhall is expected to see his first action of the season this Sunday against the Eagles, which we mentioned him last week in our fantasy segment, which we likely won't have this week because there's no Art again. But finally, the Titans, Kenny Britt looks like he will play this week, but Jake Locker is definitely out, and they play the upstart Minnesota Vikings. And that brings us to our next segment, which in the original format we called entertainment news. We carried it over to this new format, and we just used it as a forum to share what we think are the biggest performances from the weekend. And I felt like most of the big performances, at least statistically, were in losing efforts. So this week I'll acknowledge that by giving a big performance and a loss, and then a big performance and a win. So in a loss, I have to go with Charles Johnson of the Carolina Panthers. He sacked Fool's Gold Zone Matt Ryan 3.5 times. He was previously sacked only 4 times the whole season from that game. I also wanted to acknowledge Miami's Cameron Wake. He 4.5 sacks of Kevin Cobb, but against that putrid Cardinals offensive line, it really lessens that accomplishment. And as I said, there were several losing efforts that I thought were big performances, but if you don't get the W, it doesn't really matter. So I'll go on to my big performer from a winner, and I'm going with Michael Vick this week. He's been under heavy scrutiny, and rightfully so, but he did put together a nice performance against the pesky Giants defense this past Sunday night. A very modest 19-30, 241 yards, a touchdown pass, no picks and no sacks, most importantly, and he did rush for 49 or 50 yards. So, and against that very athletic front four, which they really have like front six, especially if you ask LaShawn McCoy. That's a hell of an accomplishment. And they got that win, and they stayed atop that tough division. So, there were some other big performances, I'm sure, that winners had, but again, just me here in the studio. That's why you hear the echoes. So on to the next segment, which was in the original format, carries over into this new sports format. And I won't do this every week. I'm just hoping that there are new listeners and we can just carry this over. But it's now our power rankings, our top 11. And since our old format, we kind of went through my 11 and then added where they had their picks in there. We're just going to each submit 15, and from that, I will take those and average the rankings and then derive our top 11 from that. So that's the new format going forward. Efficiency is the rule here at Jonesin. So with that, we'll start. The Texans are unanimously number one. I say that's not true. I had them 1. Stefan had them 1. Art still has them 2nd. They're undoubtedly the most dominant team thus far this season, but against teams with a combined record of 5-11, and they face another likely non-test in the Jets upcoming on Monday night. That defense is good. There's no doubt about that, but does a great defense give up 141 yards and 25 carries to the artist formerly known as CJ2K? That we shall find out. So second in our rankings, the Baltimore Ravens. I had them 2nd. Stefan had them 3rd. Art still had them 1st. And after that very emotional win last Sunday night against the Patriots, they followed that up on Thursday night with a tough win over a divisional foe in the pouring rain, no less. It was their 4th game in an 18-day stretch, and I don't think there's any doubt, especially in my mind, that this is the league's toughest team, not only on the field, but between the ears. And I just love what they're doing this year. Flacco looks poised. And all 3 of us have him in the Super Bowl, so no real shock there. And coming in at 3rd on our rankings are, they're formerly known as Fool's Gold, possibly, the Atlanta Falcons. I had them 4th. Stefan had them 2nd. I mean, he's from there. And Art and I are finally caving. Art had him 3rd. So then this is a good football team. But it's still a team, I need to remind you all, that has had a lot of recent regular season success. They've had win totals of 10, 13, 9, and 11 over the past 4 seasons. But to go along with that, a total of 0 playoff wins. What's going on in Atlanta in September isn't exactly as surprising as you might think. Do it in January, and you'll get my attention. And speaking of my attention, the 49ers, especially over the last 16-game stretch, they're 4th on our list. Another very mentally tough team, like the Ravens, which is not a coincidence, as they're both Harbaugh-led. They out-Tebowed the Jets with the backup quarterback of their own that is actually a quarterback, and that was a sight to see. For me, which I didn't see it. I really didn't watch the games this week, but I saw enough that you should listen to this and think it's valuable information. But Alex Smith, he's continuing to regress, and that should be a cause for concern. Even without Revis in the lineup, he managed only 12 of 21 for 143 with a 57% completion percentage And I do understand the game was never really in doubt, but I also don't think that Colin Kaepernick's weekly increase in plays is exactly a coincidence. And as far as the 49ers, they were third on my rankings, fourth on Stefan's, sixth, on Art's. On to number 5. This is where I had him. This is where I had them a week ago. The Arizona Cardinals. It is a cause for concern that letting Ryan Tannehill torch them for an almost rookie record for passing yards, along with that, they need to get better along that offensive line. 14 sacks in 4 games, 8 alone last week. But I must say about this team that playmaking defense and special teams, i.e. Patrick Peterson, will almost ensure they're in every game. Like it did a year ago. They're not the best team record-wise over what I think it's now 14 or 15 games now without that capability. So with Arizona, I had him 5th. Stefan also had him 5th, and Art a little higher at 4th, which brings us to the number 16 on our top 11. The New England Patriots, Stefan's New England Patriots. That was an impressive second half after trailing early, 21-7, and on the road. And their propensity to keep finding running backs that I've never heard of. Brandon Bolden from, you guessed it, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And this week, the other Manning returns to town for probably the AFC's game of the week. And it's the Manning they can actually beat. So, and that's what Stefan usually makes a comment, but he's not here. I think I'm just lonely in the studios. But regarding the Patriots, I had him 6th. Stefan had him 6th. Art, again, a notch ahead, had him 5th. Moving on to the number 7 team on our list, the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure how they ended up here after what was likely their most impressive win of the season thus far. I knew they'd rally for Vic, which is exactly what they did on the night. And Eagles great Brian Dawkins, Dog Vader's number was retired at the link. And I had him 7th, which is where they are in our rankings, as did Stefan, and Art had him a little bit lower at 10th. And on to number 8, the San Diego Chargers. I guess we're all starting to believe in them. It was a solid bounce-back win in a tough-to-play Arrowhead. But let's face it, that's a Chiefs team that probably isn't very good. This Chargers team very well may be very good, and they very well may give the Broncos a run for their money in that AFC West. That's something we'll continue to play out. I had them 10th, Stefan 8th, Art 9th. Speaking of 9th, we go on to the 9th team on our top 11, the Minnesota Vikings. I didn't bump them. I didn't bump them up just yet, mainly because of the uncertainty on how we feel how bad the Lions are, or how good or how bad the Lions are. And speaking of the Vikings, I know Art says it a lot, but I don't think the league is quite acknowledging how much Percy Harvin does for this football team and how much improved Christian Ponder has become. And in my rankings, I had these Vikings 11. Stefan also had him 11. Art a little higher, no shock, at 7. And the Packers jump back in to the top 11 at number 10. And for me, this is really a 3-1 team. So they probably should be ranked a little higher on our list. The defense does look improved, but that O-line, I think, will haunt them all season long. And I had them 7th on our list on my list after beating the Saints. And then Stefan had them 9th and Art 14th. And rounding out our top 11, Chicago Bears jump back in. I'm not sure if that defense is that good or just Dallas is that bad. It looks like Stefan and Art gave them more the benefit of the doubt than I did. I'm not ready to do that just yet. And I say that because I still had the Bears 14th. Stefan 10th. Art had him 8th. And the best of the rest, we have the Giants, Bengals, and Broncos. Giants at 12th. And I guess in no particular order, but the Giants weren't. That would have been a tough win for them to get in Philly on a night where emotions were running pretty high, and they were backing their quarterback. But Eli did have a season low 57% completion percentage, but you still feel that if he's got the ball last, the Giants have every chance in the world to win that game. I actually had the Giants 12th. Stefan didn't rank them. He's in Amsterdam, so he only ranked 11. Art also had them 12th. That's why they kind of fell in that slot. Cincinnati at 13. No real impressive win to speak of just yet, but they're 3-1. And 3-1's 3-1 in this league. And their only loss is to Baltimore on Monday night. And that's really no shameful experience to have on your running game. Their run defense was what needed, that addressed as their need for their biggest improvement. And they did that at least this past Sunday, shutting down a previously unstoppable Maurice Jones-Drew. And then finally, I wanted to mention Denver because they did fall into one of the three best of the rest. I had him ranked as high as 9, but Art had him 15th still. I don't want to, and I'm not overreacting about a blowout win over Oakland at home, but the Raiders team, that Raiders team did beat the Steelers last week. So, and the biggest positive out of this past week's game was the performance of Manning, who did go 30 for 38 for 338, 3 touchdowns and no picks, and the ageless Willis McGahee he's reaping the benefits of this on the ground. Ageless wonder. So a very interesting matchup between them and the Patriots this Sunday, which brings us to our next segment, what we think will happen. Our Whim Hits, our weekly picks going forward for week 5 of this NFL season. Picks. I was 6 for 9. 6 and 9. Not 6 for 9, I wish. Stefan 8 and 7, and Art 6 and 9. And on the season, I'm a despicable 23 and 40. Stefan's a respectable 31 and 31, and Art's a 17 and 30. But as far as this week goes, we start in St. Louis with Arizona 1-point favorites going to St. Louis. I actually took St. Louis here, and Stefan and Art took the Cardinals. I struggling against Miami at home. Maybe they learned from that. Maybe they didn't. So obviously -1. I'm picking the Rams here at home. They're just a much better football team. So I disagreed with them two there. And then the second game, Green Bay goes to Indianapolis, 7-point favorites. Actually, Stefan and I took the Packers, and Art's riding the luck train. He took Indianapolis there. So our Baltimore Ravens head to Kansas City, -4.5, clean sweep there. We've all got the Ravens, and I don't think I have to explain why. Philly +3.5 at Pittsburgh. We all took the Eagles there. I just don't think we believe in the Steelers yet. You don't lose to Oakland that way, even off the bye. And they could win by 3, and we all still cover. On to the next game. The Bears go to Jacksonville, 4-point favorites. I've got the Bears. Stefan's got Jacksonville, and Art also has the Bears. No real analysis needed there. The Bears are a different team on the road too, because from what I heard at Dallas, Texas, Jerry World, whatever, this past Monday night, it was 50-50. So they do travel, and I just don't believe in Jacksonville very much at the moment, especially at home where there's 0 home field advantage. And the big AFC showdown, Denver and New England. I've got New England. I've got Denver. It's +7. Getting 7 points from Peyton, and both Stefan and Art, they're going with New England. It's a lot of points from a very competent offense, and I think it might even be, if it's a noon game, maybe not, but the 7 points is a lot. I'll take Denver and Peyton there, and then we go to Actually, I went across it. There's probably a 3 o'clock game at New England. And then it might be Sunday night. But this is why I need other people here. But so I'll skip back over to this side. Atlanta heads to Washington. 3-point favorites. I'm going to take the Redskins here. The Redskins have played well at home, and I just can't take fool's gold just yet. But Stefan and Art can. Stefan was always drinking the Kool-Aid, but now Art is sipping on it a little bit now too. And Miami plus 4.5 in Cincy, clean sweep. We've all got the Bengals, as well as Cleveland plus 10 against the Giants. All three rounding it up. Seattle plus 3 against Carolina. I've got the Seahawks, as does Art, and Stefan's rolling with the Cam Newtons. Tennessee heads to Minnesota plus 5.5. I've got Tennessee. Obviously, they both have Minnesota. I've got to ride Tennessee to do something, and Hasselbeck will get the start there, as I mentioned earlier. So we'll see. And Minnesota could easily win that by 3. At least Vegas has given Minnesota some respect, giving them a more than a field goal favorite. And Buffalo plus 9 in San Francisco. I've got Buffalo. Frickin' frack have the Niners, which, East Coast, West Coast. But this year that hasn't really translated, so we'll see. And Buffalo can't be worse than they were a week ago, right? Yeah. And then on Sunday night, I knew that, so it could be a 3 o'clock. Sunday night, the Chargers head to New Orleans, plus 3.5. I've said it, and I'm sticking to it. I guess the Saints did cover last week. I do expect us to win that game, so I will take the Saints there. So, as will Art. Stefan's going with the Chargers, and I'll likely be at that game, so hopefully Drew does break and make history. And finally on Monday night, Houston Texans, -9, travel to the Jets, -9. Monday night, road favorite. That's a lot of respect for a team that probably at this point deserves it. I'll take the Jets there, as will Stefan. Art's rolling with the hometown Texans. And on buys this week are Dallas, Detroit, Oakland, and Tampa Bay. And Sheik tweets that the Sheik is off with Stefan in Amsterdam, doing things, Deuce Bigelow, Deuce style. But both will be back next week, along with Art, and along with all 3 of their segments. And on a quick note, in the serious note, not really serious, but just want to acknowledge this. I have joked more than a couple times about Art and Stefan not being here. It's not because they didn't want to be, not at all. They're the main reason I did a podcast at all this week. It gave me a chance to thank them, and they're very much into this. And further, you listen to this, you'll see how much I need them going forward with this. We all 3 love doing this. We love our 2 listeners, and you know what? That's enough for us. It certainly seems to be that way. So Art, Stefan, and of course Kevin and Casey, thanks for making this real for me. It's a dream fulfilled, even if it's just with you guys. That's all that really matters. And if there are other listeners out there, be heard. We love you too. Just wanted to thank all. You just wanted to take that moment, and I had the time to do it and not make them blush in front of me. So, now that said, I'll wrap up the 21st installment, and hopefully there are many more to come. Full crew next week as we take on number 22 in only a way, Jonesin can. Podcast up.